Star Wars Episode 2 Attack of the Clones is directed by George Lucas and tells a story about Obi-Wan and Anakin trying to protect Padme Amidala from a bounty hunter that's out to kill her, which may lead them to the creation of a clone army. Now, I remember watching this film back in the day and I thought it was really entertaining. It was my first ever introduction to Star Wars. And nowadays I prefer Revenge of the Sith or the original trilogy, but back then this was a really fun movie for me to watch. I love watching space battle movies, and this movie had it all for me, or so I thought, because I was very little back then. Nowadays, this movie is pretty disappointing and doesn't hold up as well. For one, while many of the visual effects here still look pretty impressive today, and the performances for the most part are fine, like Samuel L. Jackson and Obi-Wan Kenobi played by Ewan McGregor is great, I found this movie lacking in the performances and the story department, which makes this a weaker entry than Phantom Menace. This movie had a lot of problems with some of the performances from Hayden Christensen and Natalie Portman because their romance and dialogue here.
I don't like sand. It's coarse, rough and irritating, and it gets everywhere.
It's just awful. Like porn parody awful. George Lucas can't write romance to save his life, and it's especially a problem because that is one of the main focal points of the entire film. Seeing the romance between Padme and Anakin blossom is nice to see at times. There are a few cute moments, but whenever they have to speak,
I wish that I could just wish away my feelings.
their dialogue is downright terrible. It feels unnatural in many places, and I just couldn't get behind their entire romance. The only thing I was able to get behind in this story point was when Anakin starts to have his darker side come out within the end of the second act, which then leads us to the third act when shit starts to get going and the action starts ramping up again. But it's that second act where the dialogue and romance brings the movie down to a halt. The introduction to the story of Padme and Anakin is pretty fine. Seeing them rekindle their friendship a little bit, and with it now being a bit awkward, but it's still fine enough. And the whole subplot with Obi-Wan going after this bounty hunter, which leads him to the clone army, is pretty interesting. Seeing him use his wits to try and figure out what's going on in the system is fine to watch, but I felt like this movie could have had a lot more to do for him as a character and make him figure out things in a much more interesting, more entertaining way than just talking to people and just looking stuff up. Like, I felt like there could have been more to the story that could have made it a lot more entertaining. However, when we do get to this clone base where all the clones are being formed, it is very interesting, especially seeing this dialogue exchange between Jango Fett and Obi-Wan, which then later leads them to a fight. I really like that, and the final battle was really entertaining and a lot of fun. Though some of the visual effects don't hold up that well, it's just fine, like visually. The grand scale of the fight sequences and the Jedi war that started this fight in this little arena was just so epic to see, and I still love that. It's one of my favorite Star Wars moments. Everything else is just fine and entertaining enough, and then everything ends off with a fight between Christopher Lee and CGI Yoda. It's just a bit hokey, but honestly it is a lot of fun. But it's that second act that made this film a whole mixed bag. I didn't like how the story progressed in the second act. It felt very boring. The dialogue was very awkward. I didn't like the romance, and I didn't feel like it was well portrayed here. I understand the story, the pacing of the romance is fine and everything, but just the dialogue and the way it was given with the performances was just so awkward. I felt like the romance halted this film to a stop in the middle, and it just made the whole film a lot more mixed for me than Phantom Menace. It's not terrible. There's a lot of stuff I like about the film, but all in all, in terms of the prequels, this is definitely the worst. I'm going to give Star Wars Episode 2 Attack of the Clones a C+. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please leave a like, subscribe, comment, and I will see you guys next time.